Hello, everyone. We're back for our final episode
of the season.
Yes, maybe of the podcast.
We'll see.
We're not sure yet. But before we get started on today's episode, I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate Steve on getting a goal today in his soccer game.
That is true.
It was a header. It was very exciting.
Yes, the first header from a great corner kick from my friend Roberto. I put low in the corner, but it was going to be wide. But the defender decided to kick it back into the air, right back into my head, and I got it. I made sure to get it on the second try.
Yes. And I saw it happen. It was great.
It was good. We ultimately lost 4-2. But
oops.
The reason we bring this up is because in a game like soccer, it's very obvious what the goal is.
To get goals.
Right. You pass the ball around, you shoot, or you put a header in there, and you want to put the ball in the net.
Right. Pretty simple. Black and white.
But then you start looking back and, well, why do I want to put the ball in the back of the net?
You want to score, ultimately, to win the game, but why?
Why do you want to win the game? Well, I don't know. In the Masters League here in Monteserrin in Quito, Ecuador, fame and glory, of course.
Yeah.
But you go farther and farther and think about the things that you do and why you do them. There's usually some final end to why you do it.
And that's what we're going to talk about today.
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Steve. We're here working through what drives, motivates, and inspires us to act.
Whether it's a career, a religion, a family, or winning a soccer game, does it even make us happy?
Well, winning the soccer game would definitely make me happy.
Yes! Amen. Didn't happen today.
That's simple. Still came away. Beautiful day, fun to play, things like that.
I made a fool of myself screaming when I was excited that Steve scored a goal.
Yeah, it's fun.
Don't you dare eat another gummy worm. I saw you reaching.
I want to eat the rest of the gummy bears, but it doesn't bode well
They're gummy worms.
Gummy worms doesn't bode well for recording.
No.
Anyway.
We'll cut all that.
Anyway, there are lots of things that you could ask yourself about the decisions you've made. We have gotten some questions in our life about some of our decisions.
Definitely. This episode is going to be all about reflecting on why we make the decisions that we do. It's something that maybe we don't think about very often, but I think it's important to think about it. So one thing that people had a lot of questions about for us was when we started telling people we're moving to Ecuador.
Right. And if you've been listening to this podcast, we did talk about this move already. But it still happens when we go back to the States and we tell people, yeah, we're living in Ecuador.
They're like, oh my gosh, what? Why?
Why Ecuador? Why would you do that? All of those things. And so we have to confront that very real thing of what is this final end? What do we hope for? Why do we make our decisions the way we do?
Right. And so when people ask us this question, typically our first response is we want to raise bilingual kids.
That's first and foremost. We feel it's valuable, and the best way to do that is to be fully immersed in that language and culture.
Right. But then they ask, but why Ecuador? Of the Spanish-speaking countries, why did you choose Ecuador?
That's a little bit harder. That's kind of a toss-up of sorts. But we got a job there.
Yeah, pretty simple. We got a job, and so we figured, all right, that's where we're going. Didn't make a huge difference to us where exactly we ended up, but we were very excited about living in the capital here, too, of Quito.
Right. And Jen, when learning about it, saw mountains and no mosquitoes, and that also helped.
And good coffee.
Helped the decision.
Yeah, no mosquitoes. Are you kidding me? I'm in.
So then people naturally ask, well, so you went to Ecuador, do you know Spanish?
Yeah, they're like, oh, are you bilingual now? And we're like, well, we have lived here for about 2.5 years at the point when we are recording this episode. No, we are not bilingual, but we can see huge progress in our kids. I mean, it's crazy. I am just the most proud mom.
We go back and ask about our own motivation, and it really came back to our kids.
And then we started asking ourselves when we were doing this episode outline, we're like, why exactly is it so important for our kids to be bilingual?
We think it opens doors for them.
We think they'll be able to have more opportunities with those doors open in terms of career.
And if they grow up monoculturally, that might put them at a disadvantage to communicate and have empathy with other people in general.
Yes. So what is the ultimate motivation here? It's our kids. Why is this important for our kids? We think it's going to help them with opportunities, perspective, all these wonderful things. So this all trickles down to our thinking that living in Ecuador and having our kids learn Spanish will better position them in life, in their professional and personal lives. We want good lives for our kids, and we want our kids to be good humans.
Yes.
Woo! But we want to break it down even more for you. A while back, I read an article in the New York Times about Thomas Aquinas, and apparently, I don't really know a lot about the guy. Steve can talk about him a little bit more, but apparently he has this concept of the final end, the ultimate motivation for why we act. And then within that, there are 8 categories of our motivations. So why do we do things? Do we do them for wealth, praise and admiration, enduring glory, power, to maximize pleasure, health, good of the soul, knowledge or virtue, or to come face to face with the divine?
Now, this is just a snippet of Thomas Aquinas and his overarching philosophies. He was mainly a philosopher stuck in the medieval times, which means he focused most of his effort and energy on Christianity.
There it is. We're Christians.
So one of his main contributions in that was the cosmological argument for God's existence, which basically comes down to nothing comes from nothing. So because we don't have nothing right now, that something had to come from something. That something happens to be God.
Dun, da, da, da.
Maybe not the best argument for God's existence, but an argument for God's existence.
Yeah.
And it worked really well in a time when everybody pretty much believed in Christianity anyway.
Ew. Easy audience.
But in this little bit of his philosophy, he talks about these different reasons why you act. And eventually, that number 8 is to come face to face with the divine, to experience God. That might come later. We're really looking at all of the other reasons that he has here for us. And maybe, did he miss any?
Yeah. One quote from the article, which, by the way, the article is called The Art of Choosing What to Do with Your Life. And a quote that I liked from it, it said, "To be asked to give reasons for one's personal decisions is to entertain the possibility that such reasons exist." And that is powerful because we are making decisions all the time, and probably without thinking very deeply about, ultimately, why am I doing this?
Right.
I don't know why I went into like a surfer accent right then.
I mean, they definitely ponder the depths of life and meaning. So
Yeah, that's probably what it is. They're deep humans.
But the idea that you could even give reasons other than arbitrarily saying, oh, it's my personal preference, or I like that, or something like that, when you're confronted with the idea that there are reasons why we make decisions, you think about what those reasons are.
And I liked the article so much because it categorized them. That was fun for me because then it's easy to go back and think about some of my decisions and go through the different categories and think about, well, which category did that decision fall under?
So we could go back to this conversation we have over and over about moving to Ecuador and wanting to raise bilingual children. Which category does that fit into?
Yeah, our decision fits into more than one of those categories. I don't know which one I would choose, but going through them, I don't know. Maybe, honestly, wealth is probably part of one, because if I'm thinking about them getting good careers and everything, that's got to play into it. That sounds so sad when I say that out loud, but
you can think of that as good of the soul. This is number 7, knowledge or virtue. Like, then they will have that knowledge or virtue of being able to...
Yes. Let's do that one. I like that one better.
But other things are like praise and admiration. It is admirable to be able to speak multiple languages.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. The point is, we're thinking about this, and even though maybe it doesn't fit exactly into one category, it's important to think about ultimately what is our final end here in moving to Ecuador and wanting our kids to be bilingual.
So we think it's an interesting way to look at why we make the decisions we do, and perhaps narrowing the motivation to 8 basic categories might give us a better idea of the trajectory of our life. And although we already did the identity episode, it might give us a better idea of who we are. Because we are what we repeatedly do, right?
Right. And if we know why we do what we do, it could be enlightening. Also, making decisions can be exhausting. I always think about when we go through that stupid pizza line. Well, we don't do it anymore living here in Ecuador, but in Florida, there's this pizza place we went to where you have to choose everything, all of your toppings, like the kind of dough, the kind of sauce you want, all the toppings, all the things. And it is stressful for me. I don't like it at all.
What about Subway?
I don't love it. I don't love those kinds of places because it's anxiety inducing, and especially when you also have 3 kids.
Maybe. But I can just jump in here and say this is why I tend to order food.
Thank you.
Like, what does someone want on their pizza? Doesn't matter. I already ordered it.
Or you just let the kids choose, and Shade's like, I want corn and dried cranberries on my pizza.
Yes, that actually happens.
Yes.
So that first kind of decision that we make, or the ones we think we're not making, those arbitrary ones. If you think about it, these decisions, it makes you feel out of control. Because you're not making that choice. Like, oh, that's what I do.
Yeah, and I don't know that anyone wants to feel out of control or even on the flip side, kind of trapped if you're just making these decisions arbitrarily.
So we're going to delve into some decisions that are also philosophical in nature.
Sounds good.
We're going to go into Plato's allegory of the cave.
Ooh, I love this one.
So if you're not familiar with it, it's these prisoners chained up. They can only face one way, and they only see shadows of objects on a wall from like firelight and boxes and things passing in front of the firelight. Does that make sense, Jen?
Yeah, I'm following. So what they see, they think is reality. That's all they see. So they have limited perspective. They don't know that the silhouettes they're seeing are just that, silhouettes. They think that is reality for them.
And the noises that come along with any of those silhouettes that are passing by, they think go with that silhouette, that shadow on the wall.
The bottom line here is that this is such a great allegory because we are those prisoners sometimes. Sometimes we don't realize that what we're looking at isn't actually reality. We think that it is. And this is when we've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but when you kind of live in a bubble and you stay in the bubble and you don't break out and you see things a certain way every time, and that maybe isn't exactly what the reality of the situation is.
And on top of that, the latter half of the allegory of the cave is someone who has been freed, gotten out, seen what reality is, comes back to tell them about it, but because they're no longer living in the cave, they don't see that reality as clearly. They see something totally different. They have so much more knowledge. And the other prisoners think they're just dumb.
Or crazy.
That what they've seen isn't real, and that now they can't even see what reality is. The silhouettes are fuzzy to them now, as opposed to a clear, crisp image.
Right. This is just making me feel validated even more in making this move to another country as far as getting out of our bubble that we had been living in Florida for so many years. Another way we make decisions is simply to relieve pressure. We feel maybe backed into a corner. We have to make a decision, like quick. And it's stressful, and we just need to make the decision so that we can move on with our lives. And we're not stopping to ponder, well, why am I making this decision? Under which category does it fall?
And that's no way to live.
No way.
So then, sometimes we do have people who listen to this podcast and then ask us, why'd you make the podcast?
What's this all about?
Are you trying to get a lot of followers?
Are you trying to be famous? No. The answer is no.
And we do ask ourselves that question. And if we went through them, I don't know. I'm doing this podcast because my wife wanted to.
Yeah, I think I do like the idea of making a podcast that other people will listen to, and we'll be able to potentially make connections with other people across the globe.
Enduring glory. Enduring glory.
There
Jen,
it
that's
is.
what it is.
There it is.
You want that.
You pegged it.
Immortality. These podcasts will live on forever.
Yes.
But what we do want is to go through each category that Aquinas had set out and just talk about what we've decided based on that.
Yeah. And you be thinking about this as you listen in your own life. So up first is the category of wealth. Are you making this decision because of wealth?
Plenty of decisions are done by this means. You think about your career, or maybe you think your career definitely wasn't wealth driven, or other decisions within what you do with the money you get from your career. How are they wealth oriented?
I grew up in not a rich family, and I always thought about whatever career I ended up in, I wanted to make a lot of money. That was a thing for me growing up. Like, I thought about that. No, I did not do that. I did not do that. Well, priorities shift. You gain experience and maturity, and you realize, loving my job is more important than how much money I'm going to make.
Sure. One of the decisions that I've made based on wealth is this concept. We talked about it in season 1 with finances, but FIRE. Financially independent, retire early. At about age 32, I decided to make a lot of my decisions based on future wealth, not current wealth, because the $5, $10 decision that I make today doesn't really affect you long term unless you keep making those decisions every day.
Starbucks every day.
That's not what you should do.
Oh, no, do not do Starbucks every day.
The other concepts of wealth that come into our minds is decisions based on generational wealth. Like, what can we give to our kids, or what did we inherit?
Right. But going back to the FIRE thing, I want to interject because you were saying, like, to be able to retire early. And yes, you have to have wealth in order to do that. I understand that first kind of foundational step. I mean, I guess you could retire early without the wealth. It would just be a little tricky.
That's called lean FIRE.
Oh, okay.
Or barista FIRE.
Right. I'm sure I know all these terms. But the ultimate goal, or final end, I should say, to retire early is
to do whatever you want. You have time.
Time to be with the people you love, to do what you want to do. So it's not necessarily about like having money, but that certainly plays a huge role in it.
Definitely.
Next up, praise and admiration. Are you doing what you're doing for praise and admiration?
Not usually.
I am. So going back to The 5 Love Languages, a book written by Gary Chapman, I am words of affirmation. I like receiving them. I also like giving them, as I did today when you scored your goal. It was
Well
more
done,
like
Jen.
Screaming words of affirmation.
Well done. You're doing a great job here.
That's very funny. I feel so great that you said that to me. Thank you.
I'm just, showing you love.
Thank you. I feel loved. So I can resonate with this praise and admiration one. Faux show.
The other way that we both have made decisions and maybe even met each other in this line of thinking and decision making is the stage.
On the stage. I was hoping we would be in sync.
Well, you went up. I just went like a dramatic stage.
Oh, yes. But we were both dramatic.
Right. So when you're on the stage, whether you're a lead character or not, there's eyes on you.
Love it.
And then when you're done with the show, it could have even been a bad performance. There's still praise and admiration that you were bold enough to be on stage.
Indeed.
And yes, we made decisions to be in shows in college, and that is where we met.
Yes.
Essentially.
So thank you, category praise and admiration. Moving on to enduring glory.
This is where You envision your name up engraved on some plaque with some trophy, some competition maybe.
Like a Hollywood star.
And you've achieved relative immortality.
Immortality.
This would be something that we might do or might aspire to do, like publishing a book.
I already have immortality because I have a blog.
Right, and our podcast, we are now immortal, right?
Yes.
As long as there's electricity and the cloud and things like that. When I mentioned records and this enduring glory, I do think of a story that brings me back to college.
Yes. I love Steve college stories. They are the best.
So many of them were just getting in trouble, but this one...
Wait. You probably have immortality at our college from all the records from campus safety of violations.
Maybe. But I didn't get kicked out, so there's no record for that.
That's good.
But while I was in college, there was a place up in Santa Clara called Cluck U.
Oh my gosh, this is a great story.
Cluck U is just a chicken wings type of place, but they
Right.
had this hot wings eating challenge.
It was the Cluck You Challenge.
And these wings were covered in this super spicy, did taste like sewage, sauce. You had to eat, I don't know, 10 or 12 of them in under 10 or 15 minutes.
And it seems so easy, right? Like, 10 little chicken wings in 10 minutes? Like, any fool could do this.
And then you also had to keep them down, as in you cannot throw up, for another 5 or 10 minutes. I don't remember the rules exactly. But if you could do that, not only do you have bragging rights with all the friends who were there with you, but you got your picture taken, put up on the bulletin board, and you got a free t-shirt.
Okay, Steve, we're headed to California this summer. We must go to Cluck You together. I want to see this because I was not a part of this story. I was not here when you did this.
I can't imagine that 20 years later, my Polaroid is still up on the wall.
Why not? I thought we were talking about immortality.
But the idea is that it would be there forever. I don't even know if the Cluck U is at the same location.
Maybe burn down.
If it was based off of that hot wing sauce, everything burned.
That stuff was flammable.
So I did this with my friends. The other two thought that they could even complete it. I was the only one to complete it. It wasn't tasty.
I did see some home video footage of this event. And they would like zoom in on Steve's face, and he had this big bushy beard at the time. So the sauce was just getting all over. It was just nasty. And he had this really intense look in his eyes. He wasn't like jolly Steve having a good time. He was serious. This was no joke. Then the camera, I remember it zoomed out a little bit and then zoomed back down under the table to his legs. First of all, he was wearing these like weird medical sandals.
That was a time, yes.
Okay, I don't know how else to describe them.
They were army surplus medical slippers.
They were hideous.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, he is tapping his feet like a crazy person. He's like totally still from the table up and from the table down. His feet are going nutso bananas.
I was running. And the song that was playing, I had to make it through, was Hotel California. I remember this. But the idea is my friends totally failed. They couldn't even finish eating them. And they both went to the bathroom and threw up.
Weaklings.
Weak. So I did finish it. I did get my picture taken. I also went to the bathroom, threw up, and then accidentally rubbed my eye. And they got sauce in my eye.
No.
No, it was a disaster.
I do remember the next part of the video. It's like kind of cuts. And then the next part of the video is you outside of the restaurant on the ground, like patchy grass. This is California. It's not lush. And you just have like drool coming down. You look like you're crying, probably because you rubbed your eyes. You look disgusting.
Yeah. All that to say, that decision was based on enduring glory.
And you got it, babe.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Moving on to the next category, we have power or making an impact.
Don't we all want to do this?
I want power.
Oh, the impact part. Come on.
Yes. I want to make an impact, a positive difference in my community.
You were going down the Jafar path. Unlimited ultimate power.
Yes. I like to think that I've made an impact as a teacher.
Maybe.
I hope so.
Maybe.
I believe it.
And that might be why you made the decision to avoid wealth and go with make an impact in your
Power.
career.
Impact. I mean, teaching is also a little bit of power because you are up at the front of that classroom and you, hopefully, have control of your class. You say, like, this is what your homework is. And, like, boom, that's what it is. They have to do that or else.
Usually the or else is chosen. But that's also the role of teaching, like the stage. You are the center of attention.
Yes. And the students always love it when you interrupt your lesson to like tell a personal story. And you think like, it makes you start thinking, wow, I have the most interesting life. I have such a captive audience. They just love hearing about me and my life. And that is not true. They just don't want to do the lesson.
That's right. We also feel like we made an impact when we were young life leaders and camp counselors, where, once again, we are leading a younger generation.
Yeah, we hope that we were good examples for these young people, friends even, and that they were able to come to us and like talk with us about real things. So we hope.
Right. And all of that was mostly volunteer. Some of it was our career. But if you think about volunteering opportunities, that might be simply to make an impact. Why would you clean up garbage on the side of the road?
To make an impact.
Hopefully, right. And that's a better earth later.
Yeah.
Maybe even enduring glory. The glory of the earth being sustainable.
There we go. I like it. All right, our next category is, do we make decisions to maximize pleasure? You hedonist, you.
Right, you Epicurean, you.
Yeah.
And there are multiple ways you might maximize pleasure.
One night stands.
Okay. I was just going to list the ones that we basically have, like sex and vacation and food. Basically, carnal pleasures. Vacation in there, like the relaxation and leaving the hard part of life.
Right. Getting out of like the harsh reality, escaping it for a little bit.
And so sometimes when we see people making decisions based on maximizing their own pleasure, we think, they're so selfish. Why would you do that?
Yeah, but other times we 100% make a decision to maximize pleasure. Do we not?
Sure. But also there'd be questions I think about what the next category is going to be like, why do you go running so much, Jen? Is it pleasurable?
No.
Yeah, so sometimes we purposefully avoid pleasure for various reasons, even when we could maximize our own pleasure.
I think of like when you've made the decision to like take your family to Disney World or whatever, which side note, we have never taken our family. But let's say that you did. That's definitely to maximize pleasure, right? You think your kids are going to have just a great time and you're going to have a good time because they're having a good time. And that's how parents have a good time, is when their kids are having a good time. And then while you're in the park, you also just splurge and you get like little goodies and treats and food and
trinkets.
Yeah. So the one time I did go to Disneyland as a child, I remember we stayed in the jankiest hotel, Penny Sleeper. I remember what it was called. It was called Penny Sleeper. And we went to Disneyland, of course, but I wasn't allowed to like buy anything. I don't remember even eating food in the park. I'm sure we must have, but I have no memory of this. Like, I don't think they allow you to bring in snacks, but if they did, that's what we would have done. But like maximizing pleasure, we would have been that family where it's like, not only are we going to Disney World, we're going to buy all the things in Disney World. We're going to eat all our meals in Disney World and do everything and just max out.
And then, of course, as Jen was saying that her family didn't do that, and our family probably would never do that, we go back to some other categories like wealth. If you want more wealth, you spend less at these ridiculous theme parks.
Of course. So all of our decisions are fitting into some category, maybe not these particular 8, but it is interesting to think about that because that's exactly why we would never max out doing something like this, because we would be thinking about, well, we don't want to spend the money today because if we save that money today, it will allow us to do more a little later in life when we are not working at jobs every Monday through Friday.
Which in a way is maximizing our own pleasure. Although a career and a job can be fun and exciting and good, it is not the most pleasurable thing in my life.
No.
And so if I'm going to maximize pleasure, I would want to reduce obligatory work.
Wow, these are just intersecting all of these categories.
Just like our choice to move to Ecuador.
There it is.
And play football.
For our health.
Yes.
No, enduring glory. You don't do it for your health. Come on, let's be honest. You do it because it's fun. Pleasure. Oh my gosh, this is getting confusing. Okay, our next category is health.
So I've already mentioned that Jen doesn't necessarily find running pleasurable, but she does it. Why do you do it, Jen?
To get a tan. Just kidding. But not completely. No, I had babies. I had 3 babies. And, I was just feeling like, I feel like my body can do things and I'm not doing things. And so I decided to start running again. And I was like, I can do this. And it's good for me. And I feel good after I run. And I like having goals and achieving them. I also enjoy, like, when I have a good time, maybe I might post it on Instagram and
definitely do.
Have praise and admiration just flooding me from all of my friends.
Mainly Ben Kales.
Oh, he's such a fan. Love you, Ben. Yes, former student who is a runner, collegiate runner, and he's always so like, oh, Mrs. Knapp, great job. Just remember, you're running at altitude, so you're doing a really good job. And he's just great.
But there are other things in health, not just physical activity, that we make decisions based upon, like your diet. So our kids, parents out there, you can probably empathize with this, or even adults that are allowed to make their own dietary choices.
Ew.
Can feel something about this. Is it okay to just eat ice cream for 3 meals a day?
No.
But could you?
Yes.
So why don't you?
There is some niggling feeling in your brain that tells you this is not healthy.
And so we modify our diets, hopefully for the best in this case, where we don't eat only sugar and fat because it tastes really good. We don't just maximize pleasure. We eat things that are healthy and nutritious for us because we get this one body and we want to make sure it lasts to then ultimately maximize pleasure, because if you live longer, then you get to have more pleasure.
Yeah, so definitely try to eat your tablespoon of flaxseed meal a day, everybody.
Just buy the tablespoon straight in.
Anyway, eat flaxseed meal every single day. You can sprinkle it on salads or in smoothies or in yogurt or in your oatmeal.
We've got all sorts of health and dieting tips.
Also, a Brazil nut, a single Brazil nut, just once a month, acts similarly.
Once a month?
Or like once every 2 weeks. It's like very, 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 very low. There's an actual study on this, I promise you. So let's just say 2 a month to keep it on the safe side. Works similarly to statin drugs to reduce cholesterol and like build up in your arteries.
But what happens if you eat too many Brazil nuts, Jen?
I don't know. There's some chemical in Brazil nuts that's not great for you.
It's selenium.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Too much selenium, bad thing.
Okay, moving on.
Next up is good of the soul or knowledge or virtue.
We have talked a lot on this podcast about learning, and that's probably one of the reasons we thought we should do the podcast, is for ourselves to learn more, for you guys maybe to learn more. And I think learning in general, that fits into this category of knowledge.
And the good of the soul part is the other, and that would presuppose that you believe you have a soul. So just if you focus on knowledge or virtue, learning things.
Yes.
Be better than you were yesterday. So even if I've mentioned it before, I will mention it again. Our kids come home from school sometimes and they're super excited that they were the best in their class at some sport.
Or fill in the blank, whatever it is.
What we immediately tell them, or try to, is like, way to go, but please stop comparing yourself to the other classmates. What you want to compare yourself to is yourself. Are you better than you were yesterday?
Are you trying your best?
And that's where this virtue comes in. The knowledge is also knowledge of oneself, which might be difficult to know. Like, am I actually improving? What was I before?
Well, I think thinking about our decision making goes into that. So you're welcome, everyone. We are helping you with the good of your soul.
Maybe. So can you think of one example, Jen, that you made a decision, it didn't have anything to do with health or pleasure or wealth, that you just did it for the good of your soul?
When I think of what is good for my soul, it is when I am in nature. Last weekend, we went to a place called Hacienda El Refugio, and it is just like 40 minutes away from where we live in the city, but you're totally outside of the city. You're surrounded by mountains. We went on this hike, very, very, very steep hike with all three kids. That was sometimes a struggle with kiddos, but we did it. And we saw the sunrise, and we saw the clouds kind of rolling in and like the peaks of the mountains sticking up out of the clouds because we were so high. We were higher than the clouds. That is what I think of when I think of what is good for my soul. And I remember making the decision to go on that weekend getaway because I knew I needed that for my soul. I needed to be in nature and to experience God in nature and spirituality.
Yeah, and I was there too. We hiked. It was not for my health. We had to wake up early, so we lost sleep, and we know sleep is very important to your health.
Very important.
It wasn't that we were going to earn money or feel any sort of pleasure while I carried a 35-pound child on my back all the way up.
There was something inside of us that told us, like, it's going to be difficult, this hike. You're going to have to get up early. It's going to still be dark when you wake up. But we just knew that it was going to be so good.
Right. No one's going to see us and praise us or admire this.
Post pictures, so maybe, oopsie.
Okay, so there's that. But the decision that we made was based on the good of the soul. I think of another decision we made in our married lives together was to do these Daniel fasts with our church. Fasting in general is not usually a health decision. And for us, it wasn't. We weren't interested in losing weight or something.
Well, no, fasting for 3 weeks, no, not for health. I know there are people who say that they do intermittent fasting for health, but that's not what this was.
So the Daniel fast cuts out all sorts of the good things that you like to eat.
It is a vegan diet, but also no sugar, no white flour. So that eliminates pasta, white rice, breads, no carbs. Yeah, it was rough.
But part of that was being able to know yourself, that you can do it. It's good for your soul to know you could deprive yourself of those pleasures, of even some of the health. Like, we did lose an absurd amount of weight when we didn't want to.
Right. But we've said it so many times. It's important to do hard things. And that was certainly a difficult thing to do. But somewhere inside of our souls told us, do this thing. It will be good.
And those last two examples could also propel one to think that decisions were made according to Aquinas' last category, which was to come face to face with the divine, where you might see God in nature or his creation, or that you might have an epiphany while you're fasting. But I think this come to face with the divine is a totally separate category for lots of different reasons, including what Aquinas ultimately says. So while he sets up all of your decision-making according to the other 7 categories, this last one is what he considers the final end. That even if you did something for wealth, hopefully that wealth can be to come face to face with the divine by giving it away. If you did everything for your health, hopefully that's to come face to face with the divine by giving your health and what you're good at, your strength, to someone else. Maybe it's coming face to face with the divine, the enduring glory, not yours. And that's the difference. Like, you wouldn't do it so that your name is etched in stone, but that God's name is etched in stone, or that kindness or love is etched in stone, as opposed to maximizing your own pleasure or own wealth and getting your own selfish desires fulfilled.
And I think this is an appropriate way to end this season of Red Weather Christians, is to think about in your own life, what is your final end? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you making these decisions?
So we're to come back to this New York Times article that Jen had found. She forwarded it to me and really spurred this final end episode. And there's an element where we think about what is our purpose in life as humans. but we also have now increased opportunity and means to generate any sort of purpose or end for ourselves, it becomes confusing and almost anxiety-inducing. So one of the quotes from this is, modern liberty and modern anxiety are, however, two fruits of the same tree. We have an incredible liberty of making decisions for ourselves that affect our future, that affect other people, our children. And what do we do with it?
Sometimes we let it stress us out. Sometimes it is anxiety inducing. And looking at our decisions and categorizing them perhaps might reduce that anxiety and help us to feel a little bit more in control of why we're doing what we're doing.
This season, we've been trying to talk about what drives, motivates, and inspires us to act. You can probably find the reason that you do anything in those 8 categories.
Also, in this article, it references Alexis de Tocqueville, and he has a wonderful quote. It says, Alexis de Tocqueville noted long ago, people who have freedom and plenty but lack the art of choosing will be, quote, restless in the midst of their prosperity, end quote.
And so if Aquinas is to be understood as thinking the final end is coming face to face with the divine, we reflect back on ourselves and our Christianity and why we do this podcast, specifically Red Weather Christians. And for those of you who are still listening and aren't Christian, we want you to think about coming face to face with the divine, not as a Christian God, but as something beyond mere humanity. Can you get the idea that your decisions, while maybe solely on this earth, could have some lasting impression, something that is more meaningful than just humanity?
And you guys know I love Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. In his poem, A Psalm of Life, let's just remember his words. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul.
We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Steve. We hope you'll feel empowered to question the rules you follow,
Fear mediocrity,
and keep the conversation going.
We're out. Thanks for listening, everybody.
It's the final end.
This is The Final End.